This may not be the best way to start a review for a James Bond game, but it's my channel, I'm going to do it the way I want. I'm not particularly a very big James Bond fan, or should I say, I wasn't. I know, it's a big British franchise and I probably should really enjoy it, but I'm a little bit busy enjoying a different British franchise to want to add another one into my brain, which already has more than enough hyperfixations as it is. But I was really excited for 007 First Light because of who's making the game. IO Interactive, who've made the last load of Hitman games, a series I love very, very deeply, especially the last trilogy, I think has been absolutely incredible. When they announced they were doing a James Bond game, that was a signal to me to be like, oh, I could possibly get into Bond this way, because I really like the way in which they make the Hitman games, and also I play them in a bit of an annoying way where I don't always do stealth anyway. I actually go into a lot of loud gunfights, partially because I'm not great at the game and partially just because I enjoy doing it that way. And so when the game finally came out last week, I got all my wishes realised, because this game, while it's not perfect, is an utter dream to play, and I had to come back and do a review on here to talk about it because I'm really excited to, and also because I have not been very good with uploading. Sorry, it's been 2 months. I have very big plans that are kicking in very, very soon, and actually there should be an announcement hopefully tomorrow that will show that that's going to be the case, so stay tuned, more content coming very soon. And if you do enjoy this video, as always, make sure you click subscribe down below whether you're new or you keep coming back. I'd really appreciate the support. But today, I want to discuss all of my thoughts on 007 First Light and why it is currently my game of the year. So if you're new to the channel, what I tend to do here is just go through a few key categories and waffle a little bit. I have some things written down for ideas I want to make sure that I discuss, but it's always a bit free flow here, and me just kind of getting to waffle about the things I enjoy because I think it's more fun that way. So to lead with what the game is, as I've said, it is a game around James Bond. There's meant to be a new take on an origin story from him, developed and published by IO Interactive, who've done the Hitman games. With this origin story, you're a new entry into the revival of the 00 program, so these agents for MI6, the British Secret Service, and you're going to be tracking down a rogue agent 009, trying to bring him to justice, and chaos and calamity ensues from there, to put it mildly. The story I don't think is incredible. I'll just put that out there. I don't think it's like the best story I've ever played. I'm a very big story games fan, so, you know, I'm going to be, you know, really homing in on that kind of thing. I think the story is a little bit underbaked at points. I think there's some really good twists and turns in there, and I think personally the story is carried by its character work, by the performances and what the different characters do and how they interact with each other, because I don't think the villains were the most well developed. I will talk about that in a spoiler section at the end. Everything until then will be spoiler free. I did come out of the game thinking that some of the pacing wasn't quite very consistent. There were a couple of times where I thought the story was about to end and then it didn't, and it kept going, and I was like, oh, why that was a good jumping off point, why are we going further? Within those extra bits, I think some good stuff happened, but I do think pacing could have been a little bit stronger, I will say that much. But I have to also bear in mind that it does feel a lot like a Bond film in that sense. Bond films are not meant to be like these perfect things, at least from what I've seen. I've only ever watched one Bond film, I have to clarify that. This is making me want to go and watch a bunch more of them. But I kind of got the same feeling watching Skyfall of like, there's just a lot of stuff happening and you're there more for the ride than for, you know, the most well-written, consistent, excellently paced plot in existence. If that's offensive to Bond fans, I'm sorry, that's just how I've perceived it. But I think Bond succeeded most between what I've seen in Skyfall and what I've seen with this game, where its action set pieces deliver, where the characters are just having a really good time, effectively, in a really stressful situation, and you're just going, oh, this is really cool, this is so fun. And I remember doing that so many times. This game has made me smile more than a lot of games in recent years because of just how many things happened in it that had me going, oh, that's just brilliant. So I really liked how we went through the plot. I just think the plot itself could have been stronger personally. That's just my personal take on that bit. But as I said, it's the gameplay that really sells it. And to talk about that a little bit, there are a little bit of, you know, watching cutscenes or moving from A to B while everyone's talking and just kind of being very passive. But the main gameplay itself, I think, is a really interesting mix of a few different games. Of course, Hitman's the biggest inspiration and biggest crossover. That was natural to be assumed and was something I was actually really hoping for out of this game. You've got the mix of stealth and loud gameplay. And stealth, to me, the best way I could describe it is a Hitman-style sandbox with a bit less on offer than Hitman has, because Hitman has things that can keep you going for hours and hours and hours on end. Bond has options for how to get through, you know, a certain door or how to do a certain objective, but not to the same extent as Hitman. But it also feels like it has a little bit of, like, the Arkham games injected into it. Not to any extreme degree, but just in the way that you take down enemies, it feels a little bit more, you know, showmanship-like, with a bit more flair, and also using gadgets, luring people around. It felt a bit more like Bond was active in his stealth, whereas Hitman's very much, you know, Agent 47 blends into the background background. He's not seen unless you choose to make him seen. Bond is more of a showman. He can walk up to enemies and just start lying about why he's there. He can walk up and go, oh, I'm looking for the toilets, where do I go? And then it means the guards in that area don't care that you're around for about 10-15 seconds, and you can just wander. He will literally just lie his way through, and it's great. But within that, you can do fake surrenders, you can start hitting people if they spot you. And so what you have then is some really fluid stealth gameplay where there are some really good choices to make. But for me, particularly, who probably did more loud action gameplay in Hitman than I ever should, there is some really good stuff for when you're spotted and you go into the more action set pieces in the gameplay, because you can choose for a lot of the time whether you are loud or stealth. There are some sections that are forced loud just based on the pacing and the action and, you know, the objective of what you're accomplishing. But for most of the time in the big set pieces, you can choose however you want to go about it. And with the action, you can either have these really fun, fluid fist fights where basically enemies will come up to you, they'll try and tackle you in groups, and you can dodge and kind of counter parry melee attacks. You can grab enemies and shove them into walls or boxes, or literally charge holding their face, just running towards a wall and slamming them into one. There's some really, really fun stuff that you can do with that, which the tutorial explains quite well. And I will say the tutorial segment in this game is so well done. There's like, without spoiling it too much, there's a 6-month period where Bond is like training, and it shows you different bits of the tutorial across the 6 months, and there's no like loading screens or anything. It's blended really well together. It's great. But I actually think the Tac-Sim mode, which I'll get into further later on, had a really good bit on advanced combat training that I think almost could have been in the main game, just because I think it explained melee combat a bit better to me, and I kind of wish I'd played it before I beat the story, because it made me understand some more key moves to stagger enemies or to move them around or remind me of the things I could do, because I didn't quite clock some of the things that were possible. So the melee combat, I think it gets more satisfying the further you go in, because there's a little bit of a curve to it, I think, a little bit of a difficulty curve where you need to practice your dodges and your counters and things like that, and there are some fights that may take a couple of goes to get good at, so I really liked that aspect to it. But you can also go into gunfight mode. Now, with the way that Bond works in 00 Agents, you have what's called a license to kill. You can only shoot people who have an intent to kill you. There's a bit of a kind of a cheese strategy here that I used once or twice, which is that if you have a fist fight going on and you start to walk away from the enemies far enough that they could pull a gun on you, you'll get a little red ping that suggests they're pulling their gun. Once they've done that, the whole room is licensed to kill and you can just go crazy. And I kind of enjoyed that more because it felt, for lack of a better description, a bit like John Wick. You could pop headshots and get kills really easily on even like the medium difficulty. Haven't tried the hardest one. I'm assuming they don't become bullet sponges in that. I think it's more based on Bond's health. You can chuck guns at people when they're out of ammo. Ammo is a really funny thing because it does feel like something in John Wick where you use the bullets in your gun. Once they're out, you can run over a gun to get more ammo, sure, but it's more fun to chuck a gun at somebody and then pick something else up. The amount of times I finished a gunfight with different weapons to the ones I started, it was so common, but so enjoyable. I really loved that about it, to the point where, as I said, I would cheese it. If I got into a fist fight and I knew there were a lot of enemies around, if I wanted to push it, I'd just walk away and let them pull a gun so I could go into a gunfight, because I just thought it was that much fun. So I think that really is a good way to sing its praises for this, because I just think they really nailed it. They really, really nailed it. And that's good, because in Hitman, the gunplay is not anything to write home about. It's fine, it's satisfying, but I don't think it's like, you know, top of the class. Hitman works best for its sandbox elements, its stealth elements, and I know that full well. But the action and the gunplay in that was good. Bond takes it and elevates it and makes it so much fun. That's the kind of game I want to play more of. And the John Wick game that was revealed about 6 months ago, however long ago it was now, that's what I want it to feel like. Something akin to that, where you are throwing guns around, you are using the ammo and then moving on to a different weapon. It feels both fluid and frantic at the same time in the perfect blend. And it's why I love it so much. Combine that with, as I mentioned, the action set pieces, and this is why I give this game such a high score. We'll have my score obviously at the end of the video, but because I know I've kind of been a little bit harsh on the story and the way that it was paced, you think I wouldn't give it a really high or close to perfect score, but I will, because of the mix of the gameplay and these particular set pieces. Because as I said, there were so many moments in this game where I was either going, oh my gosh, or my mouth was just completely, like, without me even controlling it, just grinning or gasping. I genuinely caught myself doing that 5 or 6 times, just going, this is so good. And it's again what I said about it making me get into like the world of Bond and the action of that, because it sells itself so well. There's one set piece I will describe slightly because it's very early in the game. The rest, I genuinely think this is a game to go in without spoilers, honestly. But there is one set piece on a plane, and the way in which you get up to the plane and get on the plane, every time I think the set piece is going to end or I'm going to save the day, it pushes a bit further. It's like, no, you're not done with this bit yet. You know, you're either chasing the plane or you're getting up to the plane and thinking, oh, I'll stop it from taking off. No, I'll go along and hang on to a wing like it's mission Mission Impossible. I'm saying no more than that because it genuinely gets better from there, but it's so well done. And the pacing and control of those sections is literally perfect. I couldn't make them any better. And I think that is the best part of this game. When I talk about this to friends or think back on this 6, 12, 18 months later, I will think about the set pieces before anything else because the way they were handled was just excellent. They have the action element of this game down to a T. I know there will be comments that say some of the segments involving driving felt a bit weak. I think the driving is serviceable. I don't think it's anything special, but I was absorbed enough in the moment of what we were doing that I didn't care too much. I think the driving could be made better, don't get me wrong, but I think it's perfectly fine. I think it does its job, and I'm not too bothered by it. I'm absorbed in the action. That's enough to sell me. Adding this in afterwards because I completely forgot to mention it, but also the music blaring, like the Bond theme blasting or adjacent things playing while these action set pieces are happening, just elevates it even more. And special mention, because I have to, the Lana Del Rey theme for this game and the title sequence generally, just like something out of one of the films, and is absolutely incredible. One of my favourite songs I've heard this year. I absolutely love it. I think it's so good. Definitely proves, as I've heard, that Lana deserved to have a Bond song. Apparently she nearly did for Spectre, and then someone else was picked in her instead of her. I'm very glad they've gone back to her and gone, hey, do the theme for this, because she is the perfect voice for a theme for a Bond film, and it works great for the game. Honestly, First Light, incredible song, incredible opening sequence, and the soundtrack generally, right through the game, brilliant. Use of key tracks and just general overflow pacing music. Really, really loved it for that. The only other thing I want to talk about before spoilers is post-game, because I do think it's worth mentioning, and the game comes with a mode called Tac-Sim, which basically puts you into like a VR environment that is either looking back on previous missions and like reimagining them, or giving you some unique scenarios to work through. And it feels a bit like the escalations of Hitman, because they literally have escalations. Some of the levels have 3 tiers, then they get harder as they go on. There's another type called Operations, which is like an imagined what-if scenario. And they are really fun, but lacking in quantity right now. I'm very intrigued to see what they do with this going forward, because they're already teasing in the main menu. There'll be a new one coming soon where you control the Aston Martin Valhalla that appears in the game. Basically just an Aston Martin with a bunch of guns. Very fun to drive. Not going to spoil when that comes in. So I really hope they flesh that out a lot, because right now my only critique of that mode or replayability is that in Tac-Sim you can choose all your outfits. I got the physical edition because I wanted the special tuxedo, but you can only use your custom outfits in Tac-Sim. In story mode, they're just picked for you at any time. There are loads that are locked behind completing every challenge in a certain level in story mode, and I think how you replay them right now, to be blunt, sucks, because you can go back into any chapter and like specific bits in the chapter, but it doesn't really point out where you should jump in for the bits that have the challenges, and I think that could be made more user-friendly to go, do you want to do this challenge? Okay, you want to go to this chapter in this bit, here's where this sandbox appears, jump in there. I have to guesswork it right now, which isn't fun. I think the best way to do it would be to take those segments and have a section in Tac-Sim which is replay these story beats to do the challenges. That to me feels like a really easy slam dunk way to make it super easy to get the challenges done, catch up, get your collectibles, get your outfits, and then keep playing more Tac-Sim. I think that would have been a good way to do it. I'm slightly sad they haven't, but they could always do it in post-launch, so I'm not really shooting it down because it's possible they could go around to doing it that way. Because I just think this mode has a lot of promise, but I really want them to flesh it out. I want them to add more gadgets, add more things, more outfits, more weapons, give us reasons to keep coming back and give us more levels, because I really enjoy Bond's combat and the way that the gameplay flows. So if you give me reasons to keep coming back with new levels, I will keep coming back. It is that fun. I will come back at any excuse I can get. But I think that hits all of the main points that are non-spoiler for the game. So I want to, at this point, just give my final score and verdict and then talk about a few plot spoilers at the end, mainly because for people who've played the game, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. So to sum up, while I think the story itself is one of the weaker aspects of the game, I don't think it's very well paced, and some of the character motivations aren't great, even though the characters are really, really strong, especially the allied ones. It's the enemy ones I have more of a problem with. I think that the action, the set pieces, and the general feel and gameplay of Bond elevate it to a level that you can't ignore how strong it is. Because I don't love the story, I can't give it a 10 out of 10. If I did, I honestly would give it a perfect score without a breath, but I think I'm going to settle on a 9 out of 10 because I think it is an excellent game to play through. I just wish some of the story elements were as strong as the gameplay, because the gameplay is almost unlike anything I've seen in a very long time. I really enjoyed that much. So IOI, you knocked it out of the park completely and utterly. That's my only critique, is just the story. I think that could have been a bit better, but hey, I can't remember the last time a game had me gasping or grinning as much as this game did. So I think you're onto a winner there, as I think the sales and the general reception have only proved even more so in the last week. And I also just think that getting into Bond this way is kind of a cool thing, because when you think about it, this game is 15 to 20 hours long to beat the story, roughly. That is longer than watching all the Bond films combined for like Daniel Craig. And it plays into a wider argument that I've seen other people talk about, but one of the reasons I love video games so much is that you just spend so much longer with characters in a particular entry in a game compared to watching a film or even a TV show half the time, especially these days when with seasons of like 6 or 8 episodes as opposed to 22 like they used to be. I just think it helps sell a universe and a world to you better through a game if you're not already into it. So that's why I think for me, because I was into this Bond world for so long through the game and spent so much time with these characters that I wouldn't have been afforded in a film, I think that's what's really sold me on it and gone, oh, I've been sleeping on this franchise a little bit. I really need to get into it. Just getting to spend so much time in that world with those characters, it pays off. It really, really does. So if you have enjoyed the video, please do make sure to give it a like and subscribe. As always, I greatly appreciate it. Comment down below if you're planning on getting the game or what you think of it. But just as a bit of a kind of tack on at the end, just to be a bit more specific, because I want to share my thoughts here on the spoilers of it. My biggest complaints with the story are the webs. The father and son duo, who are the kind of bad guys, the main bad guys of the film. The idea the 009 isn't a bad guy, I thought was absolutely fine. I thought that might be what they go with, and I can understand what they went for. But specifically Damian Webb, I think he's kind of chucked in as this loose cannon who does all of Nicholas's kind of dirty work guy, even though he's his son. But I don't think he was fleshed out very well. Like, he was meant to be this kind of chaotic character, but I think the thing that really got me confused was that we kind of killed him at the end of Vietnam in Chapter 8, and then he's just back in Chapter 10. He survived in a big exosuit, and it just felt a bit too spoofy for me. Like, the whole segment where Bond was in prison, I thought it was the end of the game, and I was like, cool, okay, sorted. Then it kicks up again, and we're fighting Damien again because he's trying to steal Thea's core, and I'm like, did we need this? I don't think the game would have lost out on anything by removing it. It wasn't a set piece that I thought was incredible. I think I was meant to be more impressed by them bringing Damien back, and I just wasn't, because I didn't feel much of his character. I thought he was fine, but I half would have preferred Nicholas to just full on be the main villain and then really flesh him out more, because it feels like in splitting up to a father and son duo, I didn't get enough from either of them. Because all the other supporting characters, the friendly ones, M, Greenway and Moneypenny, were incredibly written and performed. I mean, I'm a big Lenny James fan anyway. Isola, a very interesting character, which I've seen compared online to like Batman and Catwoman, especially in The Batman, which I think is a really good way of describing it. Someone who is allied with him just because they have common goals, but generally would not often hang out together. I think that's a really interesting person to have introduced to this Bond. And the supporting cast of the other 00 agents, those who survived. I'm really sad Cressida didn't come back at any point. I thought her and Monroe were both great characters. Of course, Monroe couldn't come back. But Cressida, I get obviously because she was paralysed or broken her legs or whatever it was, obviously couldn't carry on being a 00 agent. But I would have liked to have seen her have some part in MI6, generally. I just think it would have been cool for her to hang around because she was an interesting character that was well performed. And once the game was over, I was like, oh, so she never came back. It felt like a shame. And that combined with the fact that Moneypenny was stabbed in Chapter 10, and we just don't know if she survived. I mean, because there wasn't a funeral, it's safe to assume she's fine. But I did think it was very weird that the credits rolling, and I was like, we never went back to Moneypenny being stabbed in the stomach. That feels like we could have had just something to confirm she was fine there. So yeah, that's what I mean about the story. Just kind of like, there were moments where I'm like, you could have just fleshed this out a bit more, had a character stick around a bit more, explain things a bit more, and that's what would have put it to a 10 to me. That's where I would have gone, oh, this was literally perfect. Because like Greenway, his whole arc was brilliant. I love, like I said, Lenny James anyway, but I like the dynamic of him not really liking Bond. He's butted his way in, he doesn't agree with him, and then as it's going on, he warms up. It's a plot story that's been done a million times before, but I think it was sold really well between Lenny James and Patrick Gibson. Patrick Gibson, should just have already said, is incredible. Think he's a great Bond. Already seen him as young Dexter in Original Sin. I thought he was good in that. Really good, I should say, but I loved seeing him in a full leading role for so long in this game. Have to lead a game of this length and with this much action all centered around him, he delivered excellently. But even right up to the end of Greenway's death, I mean, that was signposted well. The fact that they had that specific angle in him doing the Bond pose before he got shot, I was like, oh, that's a plot killing wound, that one. Okay, fine. And I shed a tear. I shed a tear at that. And also the idea that First Light, have to mention this. Oh, this really got me. The scene between Bond and Q, where Q says that Bond was the first light in Greenway's life for like a decade. I was like, oh, that's so clever. You did not need to have a reason to call it First Light, but I love that they tied that into the story. That was just beautiful. That was so good. I was such a fan of that. So yeah, some really good stuff in the story, some stuff I didn't love as much, but overall had such an amazing time with this game, genuinely. So that will do on my thoughts on 007 First Light. Thank you very much for listening and watching. I greatly appreciate you all being here. As I said, I will be more consistent with videos coming forward. Just, you know, I'm not saying every week, but not every 2 months like the last time it's been. Some more game reviews for sure, but also maybe getting back into the interview game. Something I've always loved and have not done enough of recently, so stay tuned. Some cool stuff there. But thank you all for watching. I will see you all very soon with a new video. Until then, much appreciated for your support. Comment down below what you think of the game, whether you're going to get it or not. Like the video if you haven't already, and click subscribe to stay up to date with future content. Until next time, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all soon.